It's where President Donald Trump has signed an executive order to overhaul US elections. Key changes include requiring documentary proof of citizenship for voter registering and barring non-citizens from making political donations. The order emphasizes uniformity in election practices, referencing voter ID systems in India and Brazil as models, as calls for federal agencies like Homeland Security to review state voter records for non-citizens. It also mandates that votes must be cast and received by Election Day, ending the acceptance of late mail-in ballots. Additionally, the order prohibits foreign nationals from contributing to US elections and bans reliance on barcodes or QR codes for vote counting. The Election Assistance Commission will review and possibly recertify voting systems within 6 months. We are joined once again to discuss this by Joshua Barnes, correspondent and anchor for NewsX World. Thank you very much for joining us once again, Joshua. Joshua, why should the average American citizen care about this so much? Who is Trump targeting in this executive order?
Well, yes, we're looking at Donald Trump making some changes, significant changes to the electoral voting system within the United States. It's something, of course, he has been very clear on. His consistent claims of election fraud from the 2020 US election, in which he lost, has really spurred this move forward from him. Now, he's looking, one, at making sure that only the citizens of the United States are voting. But there are, of course, advocates and voting advocates who disagree with this. Now, we need to look at the wider picture of voting within America. A lot of states have their own separate rules for voting. So what Trump's trying to do is put these measures in across the board so that there is clarity, it's more simple, but also that in his mind, people who aren't citizens of the United States can't vote. But these advocates are saying that a lot of the systems that are being used, which store the data and the information for voters, are outdated, meaning that some people might be wrongly labelled as non-citizens despite being citizens of the United States, and therefore their vote wouldn't count. Now, who are we looking at who are potentially in that bracket? We're looking at potentially people who have moved into the States from other countries, legally, potentially now citizens of the United States. But there is, of course, an agenda here, Trump looking at migration as well. Not that the two are directly linked, but that's probably the proportion and the demographic that will be mostly hit by these changes. Now, also you mentioned there the change in these mail-in ballots, and this is something that, of course, was raised in his 2020 election claims that there was election fraud. He said that mail-in ballots were dumped and that Democrats were dumping Republican ballots, and that he would have, of course, won the election as opposed to Joe Biden. However, we now are seeing a shift where mail-in ballots will have to come in before the end of the election day and be counted. This, of course, marks a massive shift compared to some previous states which allowed them to come in later. Mail-in ballots also people who weren't present for the election and weren't able to head to a poll or submit their ballot in another way. And there will be some ramifications for states that don't follow these rules. We're looking at federal fines and cutting of funds. So these are drastic changes, sweeping changes, continuing Trump's agenda, and it's something that he's promised. He's promised to step up on elections and make sure that these rules are in place. But the ramifications are going to be there potentially before the midterms that we see in 2026. Trump, as we know, has 2 years between now and those midterm elections to really do pretty much what he can, and then the country will vote once again. So for him, these are going to be in place. Whether it will strengthen his position in those elections, we'll have to wait and see, but the ramifications, of course, will be there.
Joshua, the United States is obviously a democracy. The president can sign these executive orders, but he is checked and balanced by other branches of government. What challenges is Donald Trump going to face in introducing this executive order? What hurdles is he going to have to jump over?
Well, yes, of course, any executive order has to go through the jurisdiction, has to go through the Senate, has to be passed off by lawmakers. But ultimately, with this decision here, I don't know if he's going to face too many challenges. We know, of course, that Trump controls politics in the United States, winning the House of Representatives, winning the Senate, and also winning the presidency as well. So for him, it's easier to get these executive orders through, but there of course will be challenges, and challenges from different groups. We've seen it elsewhere with cuts to the federal government. We've seen legal challenges coming in, and we've seen judges upholding these legal challenges and putting pauses on executive orders and actions. So this is something that I expect we will see. There are of course groups that are in staunch opposition to this move from Donald Trump. Though it's not as divisive as a topic, because of course elections are something which have to happen every 4 years, and midterm elections also in between that. So it's not as divisive as what we've seen with immigration and job cuts, other things that have been challenged in the courts, but I'm sure there will be some legal action from advocacy groups that of course Trump will have to circumnavigate.
Joshua, thank you very much for joining us. We now move to some more US news.